3 of the Caregiver's Toolbox. In this lesson, we're going to discuss active listening, the use of silence, and what to say when you just don't know what to say. Throughout this lesson, you'll see the themes of being a supporter, empowering others' strengths, and remaining trauma-informed. But before we go into these 3 skills, I want to talk briefly about what happens in our brains physiologically when we feel emotionally and physically threatened. Dan Siegel, author and professor of clinical psychiatry, coined the term flipping your lid. This is a simplified explanation that I borrow to describe what happens in the brain when people experience stress. I believe this is going to be really helpful as it provides context in which we'll discuss our supportive skills. So, if you hold up your fist with your thumb tucked under your fingers, it's a visualization of the brain. Your fingers are the prefrontal cortex, or the logic center of your brain, and the back of your hand or wrist is the brainstem, or the area that is in charge of all the automatic system functionings like breathing and heart rate. Your thumb is the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that senses danger and alerts the rest of the brain and triggers the fight, flight, freeze response. Now, normally the logic center is in charge. It processes, analyzes, and assesses. This part of the brain is not fully developed until you're in your 20s, so there is a reason why your teens are making these ridiculous decisions. However, if your amygdala senses danger or feels threatened, then it takes over and you flip your lid. You're no longer operating out of your logic center, but with the amygdala, and the fight, flight, freeze mode is fully engaged. When someone you're supporting has flipped their lid, they are often responding with a lot of emotions and are having a physical response. They're red in their face, fidgety, and they even may feel the need to pace. This is 100% how our bodies are designed to work. If we're experiencing a real threat, like being cut off on the highway, we would need to be hyper alert and aware, ready for action. But our bodies don't distinguish between a real or an imagined threat. A common fight response is experiencing anger, and it's interesting to see how Scripture reflects God's wisdom on how to deal with flipping our lids. After all, God is the designer of our bodies. There are several scriptures in Proverbs 15 and again in James where it talks about being slow to anger. This is describing how we bring our logic center back into control. By slowing our breathing and lowering our heart rate, your brain realizes that you're not in immediate danger, and you're able to re-engage your prefrontal cortex. So what does this all have to do with caretaking? Well, over the last few weeks, I'm sure that you have spoken to someone who's been upset or really agitated. They presented with signs of flipping their lid by talking fast, sweaty palms, voices raised, and they're fidgeting. When someone has flipped their lid, it's not appropriate to problem solve and find solutions. It's a signal that they're feeling threatened. The logic center of their brain is not engaged. Active listening and silence are skills that encourage the person to calm and decrease their fight and flight response. Active listening is the primary tool for supporting others, and it means to fully concentrate on what is being said, rather than just passively hearing the message. I've even heard it being described as listening with all of your senses, but I think these descriptions fall short. To actively listen is to listen with curiosity. Listening with the intent to know more, to explore, to intentionally seek out the who, what, why, and how of the person's story. So often we listen to find proof of our point, or even more common is to be pretending to listen, but really formulating the response in your mind. Active listening is more than body language. It repeating back what the speaker has said. Active listening is setting aside your agenda so that you can discover and truly understand the perspective of the person coming to you for support. This past Christmas, my nephew was given a gift that was wrapped up at least a dozen times. Each time he unwrapped a layer or opened a box, there was yet again another smaller box inside. In the final box, he found a set of concert tickets for his favorite band. When people finally get enough courage to ask for help, it usually means they've been wrestling with this problem or issue for weeks, months, or even years. They've been facing the same struggle for so long that when they look around, that's all they can see. There's layer after layer of issues, struggles, and circumstances that have all compounded the problem. As the person is talking and you're listening with curiosity to know more, The person is slowly unwrapping the layers and opening the boxes of their life. They're navigating their way through their story. And if we interrupt this process with a solution to the problem, we're interrupting the process unraveling and getting to the core issue. Active listening is listening with curiosity, guiding the person with questions so that they can unwrap and open those boxes themselves, where eventually they will find the core issue and you can begin working on a pathway to freedom. Let's look at silence. A lot of times we're supporting people and we're asking them a lot of questions. And just like you would help a child navigate a difficult math question, we're supporting people through difficult experiences and emotions that can be really overwhelming. Becoming comfortable with silence is necessary because silence allows the person to process the questions we're asking. Oftentimes it can feel awkward, but think back to a time when you were overwhelmed. There was so much going on in your mind. Leaving extra room for processing is needed. Have you ever heard of the saying, whoever talks first loses? This is really common in sales, but I think it can apply here as well. In the support session, people are often feeling vulnerable and just don't know what to say. But the awkwardness of silence is a gentle way to encourage people to open up. If you stay silent long enough after asking a question, people will eventually answer. And usually what they say is really, really insightful. Silent support is highly undervalued. When someone is facing tragedy or loss, they are often overwhelmed. Mentally, they're trying to process the flood of emotions. So adding to the noise may not be helpful. Being present but silent can be very uncomfortable for you, but it may be very soothing for the other person. When you don't know what to say, it's okay, and to be honest, sometimes best just to not say anything at all. I find that in every support session, I have needed to hold back and allow for silence at least once, if not more. Yes, people are coming to you for help, but working from a strengths-based perspective means believing that the information and the answer are inside of them. If you're talking the whole time, you will never hear what they have to say. If it hasn't happened to you yet, there will be a day when you enter a situation and you have no idea what to do or what to say, and people will be looking to you for hope. I can remember at the beginning of my career, I was bright-eyed and ready to save the world, but it didn't take long before I was shocked at the complex suffering and challenges that people face. You feel helpless, words are meaningless, and there's really nothing to change or fix what has happened. So what do you say? As mentioned already, remaining silent is often more supportive than saying words. But I want to offer 4 more options on how you can support others when you just don't know what to say. The first thing you can do is validate their experience. Validating someone's pain or struggle communicates to that person that I hear you, I see you. Some feel that support means to point out how to improve or fix their problem. That's not supporting, that's just giving your opinion. And others believe that they need to fully understand the issue before they're able to support. They ask a lot of questions trying to understand for themselves. This isn't supportive. That's focused on your need to understand. Wow. You can validate someone by simply saying, wow, sounds like you're going through a lot. That must be really difficult. Suffering is lonely, and by showing empathy first and not trying to fix the problem is validating them as a person, builds trust, and offers much needed support. Another way you can support someone when you don't know what to say is acknowledging the person's strengths. Oftentimes in tragedy, people try to reason. You hear things like, if only I did this differently. The common phrase, hindsight 2020, is true. People start judging their actions based on their new understanding, not their knowledge at the time. By acknowledging the person's strengths, you're offering a different narrative of their circumstances. You bring hope and encourage them to see beyond their current struggle. But remember, encouragement is all about the person who is struggling. It's not stories of your experience or someone you once knew. It focuses on them, their giftings, their strengths, and what God has in store for them. The third option is to offer support that does not require the person to initiate and that does not add or burden yourself. When you walk into a situation when you don't know what to say, you often have 1 or 2 thoughts. You either say, I want to help this person and do everything for them. Or you say, I already have so much on my plate, but I really should do more. Fixing or doing for the person is not helpful, and in the end, supporting someone out of guilt is burdening yourself and a sign of compassion fatigue. So we say things like, call me if you need anything, really anything, I'm there for you. But honestly, telling the person, call me if you need anything, is considered an empty offer and will likely never be acted upon. It's putting the responsibility of reaching out onto the person who is struggling. And overwhelmed people tend to isolate and not want to be a burden to others. As a supporter, initiate by offering what you feel you're able to do. You could say something like, hey, I have a busy afternoon, but would I be able to give you a call later on? Can I check in at 6 o'clock tonight? This offers support that is within your ability and boundaries without requiring them to reach out. But if they say no, you need to respect their answer. The fourth area is connecting with other supports. When we're supporting others, it can be tricky to navigate where our role begins and where it ends. We can feel pulled to support people through all of their struggles, but there are just some issues that are beyond our skill set. Not knowing what to say could be a signal that we are beyond our skill set and it's time to refer to someone else. I recommend that caregivers have a few community resources that they can offer to people to reach out to. In the resource section, there is a checklist of several different types of local organizations that would be helpful for you to know so you can refer people to. The support you offer is very, very valuable, but it's equally valuable knowing where your skills start and where they end. Knowing when it's time to consult a specialist is offering the best quality of support. During tragic times when you don't know what to say, we quickly revert to something that's familiar, our own stories, and our desire to fix the situation. Silence becomes awkward for us, and sometimes we find ourselves babbling on and on. This is meeting our own needs at the moment. Keep the focus on the other person's needs by listening with curiosity, validating the person's strengths, and knowing when it's time to refer to a specialist. This week, I encourage you to practice active listening and supportive silence. Even just pausing an extra 5 to 10 seconds will provide room for other people to talk. In the resource section, I also have a cheat sheet of 10 guiding questions that you can ask people to assist in listening with curiosity. Take care.
Yeah, we are thank.